All right, so I'm making this video not as so much a response to Nightmare Fuel, but there will be a response to it in this video, but mostly as my kind of flag in the ground against anti-theism.
Is the flag going up, Neil?
It's up, but it's all wet.
Just leave the flag alone, Neil.
Hi y'all. Sorry for the video drought lately, but I'm excited to be back. In this video, I'm not really going to respond to the criticisms he levels directly at Nightmare Fuel, but this video was suggested to me by a subscriber, and I thought it contained a number of points worth addressing, because I hear them made all the time. Now, I did cut out large parts of the original video so I could keep this one to a manageable length, but I urge you to go watch the original for yourself, and as always, I've linked it down below. Let's jump in.
This is what pisses me off about movement atheists and anti-theism, is that they genuinely believe that, like, if religion goes away, that all forms of bigotry would end, that terrorism would pretty much, or at least for the most part, that bigotry would end and terrorism will end and wars will end and we wouldn't have to deal with any of the problems with government. Everything would just be fine because we don't have these religious zealots at the helms anymore.
Please point me towards one person who identifies as an anti-theist who believes that so I can slap them into reality. I believe it's a step in the right direction, but the vast majority of, quote, movement atheists aren't foolish enough to believe that no religion would equal all problems solved. That's just a ridiculously absurd straw man you set up there.
And I kind of want to dispel that stuff with a few examples.
Ooh, I can't wait to hear those examples. But I thought we could play some Christian apologist bingo. Now, I know Jim here says he isn't a Christian, but I thought we'd play anyway. Let's add our chip to the free space and carry on with the rest of the video.
So I was an anti-theist for about a year or two.
I can't say that I'm sad to see you go, Jim. I mean, with bad arguments like the ones you're making in this video, I think you'd only be a detriment to the cause.
And then I quickly woke up to realize that no, atheists can be just as stupid and just as retarded as anyone else, and that anti-theism itself is a religious belief that believes in things that are just as absurd as people walking on water or dying and coming back to life in 3 days or any other virgin births.
Wow, Jim has started out strong and called 2 numbers already. So I guess Jim believes that someone pointing out that religion isn't true is somehow just as absurd as someone who believes those absurdities. I'm not sure why he would arrive at that conclusion, but I can't wait to find out. There's nothing religious about my anti-theism, Jim. I don't think religions are true. I could show you how they do demonstrable harm to people. That harm can range from mental anguish over the fear of hell to suicide bombers blowing up buildings to Catholic priests sexually assaulting thousands of children while their religious institutions cover it up, and their parishioners blindly pay for that cover-up with their donations. Religion offers you a lens in which to see the world. If those lenses were fitted into a pair of glasses, they would offer you a distorted view of reality. Essentially, you wouldn't be able to trust those glasses. It's far better if we threw those glasses away and used ones that actually worked properly to help us see more clearly. In other words, let's use more reality and less superstitious nonsense to shape our beliefs. That doesn't mean everything will magically become perfect, but it is a step in the right direction if we can manage to align our norms, beliefs, and view of the world with a currently understood view of reality. That's not a religious belief, that's just common sense.
And mainly is that if we get rid of religion, terrorism and war and governments would all just be working to a lesser or greater degree, nearly perfect or good, or at least good.
No. It would eliminate the religious problems with the government, but that doesn't mean we couldn't have a totalitarian form of government without religion. However, it would deny that government the use of religious arguments that could potentially sway people to their way of thinking, though, and that's valuable all by itself. Using religion, you can convince otherwise sane, moral people to do outrageous things if they believe their God demands it. I mean, I've seen Christians who I would consider ethically sound under normal circumstances defend the raping of children by the Catholic Church or the genocide of babies in the Bible because they either believe their God willed it or because they're so attached to their religion that they find a way around their conscience. I also wanted to point out that you're flirting with calling the "you want to outlaw all religion" space, but I'm not going to cover it because you haven't specifically said outlaw.
So anti-theism is every bit as religious as Christianity. It has bizarre beliefs, revered saints who are morally despicable, and it has a higher cause that doesn't real.
It has a higher cause that doesn't real? What does that even mean? And who are these saints? If a religious person likes the work of someone like William Lane Craig, I don't jump to the conclusion that he's a saint or that they believe he's a saint. They merely think his work makes sense and they're a fan of that work. They might even disagree with parts of it, but it's definitely a few hundred steps away from sainthood. It's not even in the same ballpark, really.
There's a lot of revered saints that were just not allowed to question at all, nearly at all. Anytime someone does question these, and I've experienced this too, is anytime I question some of the things that Dawkins says, like when Dawkins says that whether the existence of God is a scientific approach and not a philosophical approach, I disagree with that.
Setting aside that if this God interacts with physical reality, that would put it within the domain of scientific inquiry, I've met a lot of atheists who disagree with Dawkins on specific issues. How are you not allowed to question something he says? Will the anti-theist police drag you from your home? Will you be charged with blasphemy against Dawkins? Can you draw a cartoon of Dawkins and not have to fear for your life? People disagreeing with your criticisms does not equate to you not being allowed to criticize something Dawkins has said. However, I am going to add another chip to the bingo card because you seem to think that criticism of your ideas or beliefs about these so-called anti-theist saints equals intolerance of your beliefs.
And if you were to mention that you have any kind of disagreement with Dawkins, you'd get some pretty rabid responses from people accusing you of being Christian. And their proof is basically like JESUS is in my internet username.
I have to admit that I just left that part in because I thought you spelling out the name Jesus instead of just saying it was kind of funny.
These are some of the bizarre beliefs that anti-theists hold. The world would be a better place without religion. No, people will just find a secular reason to be shitty, violent, and tyrannical. History has showed this again and again.
I've never understood this argument. Do people honestly believe that it would be an even process? In other words, if you took all the people who held religiously homophobic views and magically wiped the religious reasons given to them and their ancestors from their minds, but kept everything else intact, that all these people would come out of that process with the same homophobic views held for different reasons? I mean, sure, I guess some of them might come out the other side being homophobic, but I very much doubt that anywhere close to 100% of them would. Hell, I've met religious people who would vote against same-sex marriage just because of their religious views. They might work beside and not care overly much about who they're sleeping with, but they would still deny them equal rights based on some superstitious nonsense written in a book a few thousand years ago. These beliefs have consequences, and when you base those beliefs on things that aren't true, you end up acting in ways that are contrary to reality and harmful to yourself and society.
All right. A lot of very despotic regimes, I would probably say the majority of them in recent times have been secular. The USSR, the People's Republic of China, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, arguably Nazi Germany. A lot of these despotic regimes have been fairly secular.
I knew he wouldn't be able to resist the Stalin-Hitler reference. Let's go ahead and add another chip to our card. Look, there's no doubt that you can have despotic regimes without religion. All, or most of them anyway, use a sort of religious framework. You can have cults of personality, you can have nationalism gone wild, etc. But you conveniently leave out the secular societies that exist right now that boast the highest standards of living that we've ever seen as a species. Yes, we have to guard against other forms of tribalism and intolerance, but that doesn't mean we should give religion a pass or stop hammering at ideas that frankly just aren't true.
So there would be less wars. No, most wars are fought over resources. They use religious reasons to justify it. To get rid of those religious reasons, and they will seek other just as stupid secular justifications for those wars.
And yeah, religion makes justifying those wars easier. I'll also point you towards the ISIS article that specifically lays out why they want to fight the West because of our lack of faith in their religion. Sure, they also have a few political reasons for their hatred, but they make it abundantly clear at the end of their article that it isn't their prime motivating factor. It reads, quote, "What's important to understand here is that although some might argue that your foreign policies are the extent of what drives our hatred, this particular reason for hating you is secondary, hence the reason we addressed it at the end of the above list. The fact is, even if you were to stop bombing us, imprisoning us, torturing us, vilifying us, and usurping our land, we would continue to hate you because our primary reason for hating you will not cease to exist until you embrace Islam." End quote.
All right. People have violent tendencies, and they use various justifications for why they want to execute on these violent behaviors. And if religion makes them look good in the eye of the public, or will help get support for their cause, then they're going to use it. If it doesn't, they're going to find something else.
So you admit that religion is a useful tool for justifying violence, but still think it's not useful to combat it because reasons. Do you also hold the position that we shouldn't combat dangerous ideas such as an ethno-state being a good idea because people will find another reason to justify racial hatred? Should MLK have just sat at home and twiddled his thumbs because people who were convinced by his arguments would all justify their racism some other way? Racism still exists, right? Obviously, his combating those bad ideas were a waste of time. What an absurd way to think. How do you get out of bed every day with this sort of mindset?
Let's see, there would be less sexism and bigotry. No. Even in secular states, there's been racism, sexism, homophobia, et cetera, et cetera. Again, there's no correlation, and people just, there's no correlation. Again, people just stop using religious reasons and find more secular ones. There's a lot of hate groups in the United States and elsewhere around the world that are explicitly secular in nature, who have anti-Semitic, racist, homophobic, transphobic, blah, 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 phobic, blah, 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 phobic, et cetera, whatever kind of phobic you want to throw at it, racist, whatever, tendencies.
Actually, some research has shown that the more religious you are, the less accepting of homosexuals you're likely to be. Do you also believe that the gay people being thrown from rooftops has nothing to do with religion? If you do, let me put that belief to rest for you. Quote, in the almost 2 years since the Islamic State declared its self-styled caliphate in parts of Iraq and Syria, it has employed amputations, whipping, and crucifixions to punish those who violate its strict reading of Sharia or Islamic law. But for gay people living in the Islamic State-held areas, Sunday's lone wolf attack in Orlando served as a bitter reminder of the systemic targeting they face under the group's regime of terror, where their sexuality is a death sentence, one often carried out with the tacit approval of the community around them. End quote. Do you think that tacit approval has anything to do with religious teachings against homosexuals? Or is that just a strange coincidence, Jim? Yes, without religion there will be homophobes, but there will be less of them, and the ones that remain wouldn't have the tool of religion to convince other people that their views are moral.
It would make the world more rational. Oh, God, no. If you want to know rationality, go to some of these atheist meetups, especially people on the kind of SJW side. No, it would make people probably right about one thing and nothing more. They will still buy into things like astrology, anti-GMO stuff, conspiracy theories, quack medicine, secular spiritualism, dangerous ideologies.
I'm going to ignore the SJW label, which is just another useless label handed out whenever someone disagrees with your point of view. Instead, I'm going to address your second whataboutery point about the other quackery you mentioned, such as astrology, etc. Yeah, it's possible to believe in those things and be an atheist or an anti-theist, but that doesn't make them wrong about religion. We can worry about those other things as well. We can combat those bad ideas and still acknowledge that they're right about the original point.
That it would reduce terrorism. No, again, people would find secular reasons to be violent and shitty, blah, 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 blah. I keep saying this over and over again, but it seems as though like this is not resonating at all.
Maybe it's not resonating because it isn't true and you're just wrong about almost everything you say. Ever thought of that?
So you stop believing in God. Cool. You're not any better for it. You're just probably right about one thing and wrong about everything else as you were before.
Yup, you are better for it. You've eliminated one error in your thinking and aligned it more closely with reality. You can now move on to the next step and examine your other beliefs. It's too bad we couldn't fill more spaces in our bingo card, but considering Jim is an atheist, there's still far too many spaces filled for comfort. Oh, and big shout out to Neil the 604 Atheist, who let me use this song for the patron thank you that's about to roll. His channel will be linked below. Take care, and cheers.
I've been with you since God knows when. You pick me up at the club and then you take me home, invite me in. The lights go down and we begin.